Welcome to Eurobike 2010. You're at the Morewood booth, hand-built in South Africa. Morewood Bikes unveiling the 2011 150mm split pivot bike. I'm Andre from the Morewood factory in South Africa, just taking the reins from Patrick Morewood, who's unfortunately back at home. Having just had a baby, he's spending some time with the family. Introducing for 2011 what is perhaps the most exciting bike we have ever released, the first split pivot bike from the Morewood lineup. Licensing the split pivot patent from Dave Weagle, who obviously brought you the DW link, made famous by numerous World Cup wins under the likes of Sam Hill. The 150mm split pivot bike, as you see it here, is going to be our first offering directly catered for your trail enduro market. The package which you see here, albeit is a prototype and may change slightly between now and when we expect to release the bikes in February, March 2011. Essentially running you through the basics of the frame, the split pivot design essentially isolates three main components of the rear suspension, and what that does is it gives us the ability to fine-tune how the bike acts and reacts under acceleration and braking, and it gives us the ability to fine-tune the suspension ratio independent to that acceleration and braking characteristic. And put simply, what it enables us to do is to make a bike that rides exactly the way we want it. So it gives us more ability to tune the bike specifically to the intended rider, the intended trail, and the intended kind of riding which a rider is going to encounter on the bike. Dave will explain a little more in depth the features of the split pivot.
My name is Dave Weagle, and I'm here to talk a little bit about my new collaboration between Split Pivot and Morewood Engineering out of South Africa. Morewood for 2011 is using my patented split pivot concentric dropout, something I'm pretty proud about because it's been a long process and a long time in the making, and Morewood and I have been working together for a while to bring this together, and we're pretty excited about it. I want to show you a little bit about the split pivot design, which is newly patented in May, and kind of just explain a little bit about what it is and what we've done on the Morewood bikes that is new and different. So the split pivot design really takes the best parts of a single pivot and melds them with the best parts of a multi-pivot bike. So on a single pivot bike, like this Suzumu right here, we have a main pivot, and then we also have the main pivot hooked right to this rear axle. On a split pivot bike, we do something very similar. We have a single pivot swing arm for acceleration with a main pivot here, and the rear swing arm, the rear axle pivoting on the swing arm. And this part of the split pivot is called the wheel link. And what this really lets us do is we're able to put this main pivot at the location that works the best possible for acceleration. We don't worry about what happens under braking. We don't worry about what happens under as far as leverage ratio or anything having to do with the shock. This main pivot only dictates what happens under acceleration. The brake link is on this bike, on the seat say, and we attach the brake to this part, and this link itself is what controls the braking forces. So this link actually floats between the concentric dropout pivot and the control link up here. And the control link is what really we use to control braking forces and leverage ratio in the design.
One of the key features to the split pivot is because of the acceleration characteristic that the bike has, you're able to use a slightly different geometry spec to what you would use on a regular bike. Because you've got such a great amount of anti-squat built in from the acceleration characteristic, as a designer you're able to use a slacker head angle and a lower bottom bracket height, because generally your bike is riding much higher up in its travel and using the travel more effectively. So what we've done on our 150 split is slacken the head angle back from what we would usually run at this travel point, and obviously dropped the bottom bracket height to compensate and work well with that. Up front, what we're testing at the moment is just under, it's about a 67.5 head angle with a plus 7mm bottom bracket rise, meaning your bottom bracket sitting 7mm up from your axle center line. Essentially, to put it in perspective, that head tube angle is typically what we would run on a 170mm bike, and the bottom bracket height is typically what we would run on a 4-inch bike. So your riding and your handling of the bike is going to be even more efficient, even more effective. You're going to be having the benefits of that low bottom bracket, meaning the bike is going to corner and rail really well. Your center of gravity is a lot lower, and you've got the slacker head angle, making the bike more capable on the high speed and steep terrain.